Ryan Reynolds must really be at the house bored, annoyed, or ready to get into some mess. Because why else would you want to be in here? Why else would you drag yourself in here? Why are you talking to us in the first place? Blake got this. Blake alone is doing a good enough job of messing up your family name. I mean, you've done your part, but your wife got it right now. So why are you fighting to be back in here?
Ryan Reynolds could have walked away clean. His wife, Blake Lively, is already facing mounting legal pressure from Justin Baldoni's lawsuit. The public relations nightmare continues to spiral. Why would anyone voluntarily insert themselves into ongoing litigation? What we're witnessing isn't just a celebrity defending their spouse. This appears to be a calculated legal maneuver that could backfire spectacularly. Reynolds is now fighting for sanctions against the Wayfarer Studios legal team, arguing their entire case lacks merit. But in doing so, he may be opening a door he desperately wanted to keep closed. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Do you think Reynolds is making a strategic mistake, or does he know something we don't? Let's start with the bizarre behavior that's been unfolding across social media. Brandon Sklenar, Blake Lively's co-star from It Ends With Us, has been caught liking some very interesting posts. First, he responded to snake emojis, widely interpreted as subtle digs at Lively, with a kiss emoji. The timing is suspicious. Either Sklenar is trolling everyone involved, or someone on his team is quietly signaling support for Baldoni. What makes this particularly noteworthy is Sklenar's shifting narrative about how he landed his current role. When interviewed on the Today Show, Sklenar credited Sydney Sweeney with getting him hired. His body language was telling, eyes wandering, unable to maintain direct contact while discussing Sweeney's supposed recommendation. But when the conversation shifted to meeting director Paul Feig, suddenly the eye contact returned. Yet just 24 hours later, on a different interview with Extra, Sklenar changed his tune entirely. If that logic makes sense to you so far, hit like and subscribe because this case only gets more complicated from here.
You know, Blake definitely, she talked to Paul. Paul asked how I was, and she put in a good word, and I can't help but think that might have helped, you know. But yeah, Blake's lovely, and she just, she let Paul know that I was easy to work with, I think.
Now, Blake Lively was responsible for securing his role. According to this version, Lively spoke directly to director Paul Feig and vouched for Sklenar's professionalism. Feig described it almost like giving in to repeated requests, the way you might eventually agree to a persistent child's demands. This paints an interesting picture. Was Lively ensuring Sklenar's loyalty by securing him this opportunity? Ryan Reynolds has now filed for Rule 11 sanctions against Steve Sarowitz and Jennifer Abel from the Wayfarer Studios legal team. In simple terms, Reynolds and Lively are arguing that the opposing attorneys filed claims without any legitimate factual or legal basis.
I said that Sydney really pushed for you to be hired for this role.
Yeah.
Did you guys know each other?
No, we did not. No, I was surprised, honestly, that she did that. Yeah, I was like, me? Really? All right. Playing a cowboy 100 years ago, and I've never done a white collar contemporary man. But yeah, I was honored and thrilled that she saw that I could potentially do that, and producers were on board, and Paul Feig was on board, and I had lunch with Paul Feig actually, and we just we hit it off big time, and that guy, he's such an. Have you guys ever met Paul?
No.
Feig?
Yes.
Yeah. He's just an exceptional human being.
They're asking the judge to punish Wayfarer's lawyers for bringing a frivolous lawsuit. But Wayfarer is firing back hard. Their response argues that Reynolds and Lively are cherry-picking deposition testimony, pulling selective quotes out of context to create a false narrative. The central question becomes, if the evidence is so clearly in Reynolds' favor, why fight so hard to keep certain materials out of the court record? If you think it's the second, go ahead and like the video and subscribe. You'll want to see how this unfolds.
And then Blake had just worked with Brandon on It Ends With Us, and she was still in the middle of shooting and all that stuff when we were doing Simple Favor. They were doing reshoots. And she was like, I'm working with this guy, and he's so amazing. Brandon, you got to meet Brandon. I was like, all right. Like, and then so finally we were casting this. I was like, all right, I'll have lunch with Brandon. He walks in. Within 30 seconds, I'm like jelly. Like, oh, okay, you're like the most charismatic, guy you've ever met in your life, and so talented.
The original controversy stems from the production of It Ends With Us, a film adaptation starring Blake Lively and directed by Justin Baldoni. During and after filming, tensions erupted between Lively and Baldoni. Lively filed a formal complaint alleging sexual harassment and a coordinated smear campaign orchestrated by Baldoni and his team. Baldoni responded by filing a massive defamation lawsuit against both Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, claiming they conspired to destroy his career and reputation. Ryan Reynolds initially appeared to be a peripheral figure, mentioned in the lawsuit but not the primary target. Blake Lively was handling her own legal defense. The public narrative suggested Reynolds was staying out of the courtroom drama. If your answer is no, you already know where you stand. By filing for sanctions, Reynolds has voluntarily made himself a central player in the litigation. He's no longer a bystander mentioned in someone else's lawsuit. He's actively participating, making legal demands, and forcing the court to examine his communications and conduct. Rule 11 sanctions are serious business in federal court. If the judge examines the evidence and determines that Wayfarer Studios actually did have reasonable grounds for their claims, then Reynolds and Lively look like they're abusing the legal process. Worse, it could open them up to their own sanctions for filing a frivolous motion. Wayfarer's legal team is arguing something crucial in their response. The emergence of new evidence during discovery proves they had good reason to file their original claims. Reynolds' legal team counters that finding evidence later doesn't retroactively justify filing a lawsuit earlier. The judge will ultimately have to decide whether Wayfarer's attorneys conducted a reasonable investigation before filing their claims. Did they have enough preliminary evidence to justify bringing the lawsuit? Or were they engaged in a fishing expedition, hoping discovery would eventually produce something useful? Reynolds' opposition to introducing certain evidence suggests there may be communications he desperately wants to keep out of the public record. His legal filings argue that specific deposition testimony shouldn't be allowed as supplemental evidence. If that testimony and those text messages are truly exculpatory, if they actually prove Reynolds did nothing wrong, why fight so hard to exclude them? The logical conclusion is that those communications contain something damaging. Perhaps text messages showing Reynolds' coordinating media strategy against Baldoni. Perhaps evidence of direct involvement in the alleged smear campaign. The question becomes, what's in those text messages that Ryan Reynolds doesn't want the public to see? Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are one of Hollywood's most powerful couples. They have significant media connections, substantial financial resources, and the ability to shape public narrative. Conversely, if the judge denies the sanctions motion, or worse, if Wayfarer's evidence proves compelling, it establishes that fame and influence don't provide immunity from legal accountability. The discovery process appears to be yielding explosive material. Wayfarer's attorneys claim they've uncovered communications proving Reynolds engaged in defamatory conduct. There's also the matter of precedent. This case is being watched closely by entertainment industry insiders and legal professionals. The outcome could influence how harassment complaints are handled on film sets, how publicists and crisis management teams operate, and whether powerful figures can use litigation to silence accusers. Brandon Sklener's apparent shift in loyalty, or at least his social media behavior, suggests that even those initially aligned with Lively may be reconsidering their positions as more information emerges. When your co-star starts liking posts supporting the person you're in litigation against, that's worth noting. And if this case proceeds to trial, if a jury eventually hears testimony, reviews text messages, and examines the full scope of communications, the revelations could reshape multiple careers. Ryan Reynolds built his brand on being relatable, funny, and down to earth. Blake Lively has positioned herself as an advocate and entrepreneur. Allegations of harassment complaints filed in bad faith or using victimhood as a litigation strategy could permanently damage that reputation. For Justin Baldoni, the stakes are equally high. If his claims prove unfounded, he'll be seen as someone who weaponized serious allegations for personal grievance. If his evidence proves compelling, he becomes a rare example of someone who successfully stood up to Hollywood's power structure. Ryan Reynolds didn't have to be here. He could have let Blake Lively's attorneys handle her legal defense. Instead, he's voluntarily inserted himself into the litigation by demanding sanctions. He's forcing the court to examine his conduct, his communications, and his potential involvement in the alleged smear campaign. The evidence will eventually tell us which one it is. What's already clear is that this case has moved far beyond a simple harassment complaint or defamation lawsuit. Discovery is still ongoing. More depositions are being conducted. More text messages are being reviewed. And somewhere in those communications may be the smoking gun that defines this entire controversy. Is Ryan Reynolds making a catastrophic legal mistake by jumping back into this fight? Or does he know his communications will exonerate him and he's going on the offensive? If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. We're covering every twist and turn of this case as it develops. And if you found this analysis valuable, share it with someone who's been following this story. The next hearing could change everything. The judge's decision on these sanctions could open the floodgates to evidence that rewrites the entire narrative. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.